year was 1978, a summer that clung to the air like a shroud, heavy with humidity and a sense of unease in the quiet North Denver suburb. Finney Blake, a boy on the cusp of adolescence, felt it. The mundane rhythm of his life's schoolyard taunts, the sting of his father's anger, the awkward glances at his crush was being steadily eroded by something far more sinister. A shadow loomed over the neighborhood, the specter of a local predator known only as the Grabber. Finney lived with his younger sister, Gwen, in a house where the silence was often more terrifying than the shouts. Their father, Terrence, a man consumed by drink and grief since their mother's suicide, cast a pall over their existence. Finney often found himself the target of Terrence's rage, but he had learned to bear it, to shrink into himself like a cornered animal. Gwen, however, possessed a resilience that baffled and awed him, a spark that seemed to burn brighter in the darkness they shared. Gwen had inherited something from their mother, a strange and disturbing gift. The ability to see things that were not there, things that were yet to come. It was this gift that had driven their mother to madness, to the final act of despair. Gwen tried to hide it, to pretend she was normal, but the dreams always found her, invading her sleep like malevolent spirits. One sweltering afternoon, she awoke with a jolt, the image of Bruce, a boy from Finney's Little League team, vivid in her mind. He was being dragged into a black van, his eyes wide with terror, a gloved hand clamped over his mouth. She told Finney, her voice trembling, but he dismissed it as another one of her nightmares. But Bruce disappeared, and the neighborhood held its breath, a shared anxiety permeating the air. The police, detectives Wright and Miller, became a regular presence in the area, their faces grim, their questions sharp. They turned to Gwen, her peculiar gift now a potential lead. During an interview at school, she recounted the fragments of her dreams, the images of the black van, the oppressive silence of a dark room. Terrence, enraged by the police's interest, subjected Gwen to a brutal beating, his drunken rage further isolating her and Finney. Then it happened. The terror that had haunted Gwen's dreams, that had lurked in the shadows, finally claimed its next victim. First, it was Robin, Finney's closest friend, the one who had always stood up for him against the relentless torment of the school bullies. He was gone, snatched away like a whisper in the wind. The loss of Robin left a hole in Finney's life, a void where laughter and camaraderie once resided. The neighborhood was now a hunting ground, the fear a palpable thing, a suffocating weight. And then, the unspeakable. Finney was taken. It was a moment of blinding terror, a blur of gloved hands and a suffocating darkness. He awoke in a concrete basement, the air thick with the stale odor of dust and decay. The walls were bare, the only feature a vintage black rotary dial telephone, hanging uselessly on one wall. It was disconnected, a relic of a forgotten time. Yet, at seemingly random intervals, it would begin to ring, its shrill cry cutting through the silence like a knife. The first few times, he heard only static, a white noise that grated on his nerves, a maddening emptiness that echoed the fear in his heart. But then, a voice, faint and distorted, crackled through the receiver. Bruce's voice, broken and ethereal, like a ghost reaching out from beyond. He spoke of a loose floor tile, of a tunnel that might lead to freedom. With trembling hands, Finney pried the tile free, the musty earth below seeming to offer a glimmer of hope. But soon the house foundations proved too deep to escape beneath. Finney, however, was not alone. The voices of the other victims, the boys who had been taken before him, echoed through the phone, their tales of terror and survival intertwining with his own. Billy, his voice laced with the bitter taste of experience, warned him against a false hope. The unlocked door was a trap. Billy spoke of the grabber's game, a cruel charade where freedom was offered only to be snatched away again. The basement stairs were a death sentence if used without precaution. Following Billy's advice, Finney used a length of hidden cable to climb towards the high basement window. The rusted grate covering the window pane gave way and shattered. He had a brief glimpse of the outside, the pale light of the setting sun, a reminder of a life he was rapidly losing. However, the sudden weight of his escape caused the grate to fall, the window no longer attainable. Despair began to seep in, a chilling dread that threatened to consume him. The grabber, a looming figure of menace and shadow, brought him food, a meager offering in this hellish place. Each encounter with the grabber was a psychological assault. The man didn't speak, his silence a more potent weapon than any scream. His eyes, cold and devoid of human emotion, were like the depths of an abyss, reflecting only the darkness within. As Finney battled the despair that threatened to engulf him, Gwen fought her own demons, her dreams becoming more vivid, more insistent. She saw Finney, trapped in a basement, surrounded by shadows, the very image of her fear taking shape. She tried to explain it to Terrence, but he dismissed her, his own torment and alcoholism rendering him blind to her pain and insight. So she confided in the police, desperately trying to convey the horror she was witnessing. Meanwhile, Wright and Miller investigated every lead, following the trail of shadows that seemed to coalesce around a man named Max, an eccentric stranger who had recently moved into the area with his brother. Max, obsessed with the grabber's crimes, had aroused their suspicions. Their investigation revealed a chilling truth. The house where Max was staying, a seemingly ordinary dwelling, was the same place where Finney was being held captive. The phone rang again, this time with the voice of Griffin. He gave Finney the combination to the front door lock, telling him the grabber was asleep, a moment of vulnerability that offered a fleeting chance at escape. With trembling hands, Finney unlocked the door, the taste of freedom a sweet sensation that quickly turned sour when he was captured by the grabber's dog, Samson, who barked loudly to wake his master. The brutal game started again with Finney back in the basement of this house of horrors. The voices kept coming, one after another, each with their story, each with their piece of the puzzle. Vance, a juvenile delinquent with a rebellious spirit, urged Finney to break through a wall into an adjacent freezer room. Finney followed this advice, his hands raw and bleeding as he beat against the thin wall. He found the freezer as described, but the door was locked, an obstacle that crushed any remaining hope. The darkness closed in, the walls of the basement seeming to press in on him. Just when Finney thought his spirit would break, the telephone rang again. It was Robin's voice, stronger now, his resolve echoing through the phone lines. Robin didn't offer escape routes. He offered something more potent, a way to fight back. He urged Finney to use his surroundings as his weapons, to pack the phone receiver with dirt, to transform it into a bludgeon. Gwen's vision, clearer than ever, led her to the exact location where Finney was being held captive. She called the police, her voice unwavering as she gave them the address, her faith in her brother's strength unwavering. The police, their sirens wailing like the chorus of a macabre dance, raced towards the house. They found what she described and more, the shallow graves of the grabber's victims, unearthed from the cold earth beneath the basement. In the chaos that followed, Max, realizing the truth about his brother, rushed to free Finney, but the grabber, his reign of terror threatened, turned on him, his axe falling with brutal force. The game was over, replaced by a desperate struggle for survival, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood. Finney, battered but not broken, remembered the advice of his phantom guides, the boys who had once been where he was now. He used the loose debris, the remnants of his failed escape attempts, to create a trap, digging a pit that the grabber fell into. With a roar of rage and desperation, Finney turned the receiver of the phone into a weapon, striking the grabber repeatedly. The phone cord, like a garrote, became a symbol of Finney's fight for freedom. As the grabber lay defeated and broken, Finney finally tasted the sweet victory of survival, a taste that was both liberating and horrific. He had not only saved himself, but he had avenged those who had been taken before him. He found the way out. His escape from the house was an act of defiance. He threw a steak he found in the freezer to Samson, the dog, as a distraction, then fled the horror of the basement and the house of his nightmare, only to find he had been imprisoned across the street from the house that the police had already raided. His own neighborhood. The relief of his liberation, though, was immense. Gwen was waiting for him, her tears mixing with her laughter as they embraced, the horrors of the past few days momentarily forgotten. The police sirens still wailed in the distance. Even his father, Terrence, broken by the weight of his own failures, begged for their forgiveness, a request that carried the weight of a lifetime of pain. In the aftermath of the nightmare, Finney was seen as a hero, the boy who had survived the unimaginable. But he carried the scars, the memories that would forever haunt his dreams. He had faced the darkness and found his own strength, a transformation that had forged him into a different person. He no longer shrank from the world. He no longer feared the shadows. He sat in class, a new confidence radiating from him. The boy who was once the target of bullies was now the object of admiration. And he turned to his crush, his eyes sparkling with a newfound boldness, a spark of hope in his gaze. He said, You can call me Finn. But the story does not end here. The echoes of the basement still lingered, the whispers of the victims forever woven into the fabric of Finney's existence. He found himself drawn to the dark places, to the shadows where the grabber had once lurked. He could feel them, the silent presences, the boys whose lives had been stolen, their voices fading into the ethereal. He began to have dreams, not visions of the future, but echoes of the past. He would see the grabber, his face twisted in rage, his eyes filled with a malevolent fire. He would hear the voices, their cries of pain and their whispers of guidance. He knew that he was forever connected to them, that their stories would always be a part of his. He couldn't help but go back to the house, the place where he had faced his greatest fear. The police had done their work, the evidence had been collected, the bodies had been laid to rest. But the house stood there, silent and brooding, a monument to the darkness that had once resided within. As he walked around the house, he felt a chill, a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. He could feel them, the boys, their presence like a whisper in the wind. They were still there, trapped in the echo of their suffering. He realized that it wasn't just the grabber he had defeated. It was the cycle of violence, the cycle of pain, the darkness that feeds on the innocent. But this cycle of pain had found him, and he had become a keeper of its memories. The phone, the black rotary phone that had once been a tool of his torment, was still in the basement. Finney picked it up, the cold plastic sending a shiver down his spine. He held it to his ear and waited, his heart pounding in his chest. The phone rang. This time it was not a distorted voice, but a chorus of whispers, the boys, all of them, speaking at once. They were not just victims now, they were guides, guardians, bound to him in the aftermath of trauma. And that's how Finney started his new journey, not as a boy, not as a hero, but as a bridge between the living and the dead, forever haunted by the ghosts of his past, but also guided by their strength. The grabber had not only taken their lives, he had also given Finney something, a connection to the other side, a purpose beyond his own survival. He knew then that he was never truly free. He was forever bound to the basement, to the house across the street, to the echoes of the voices, and to the lingering darkness of the grabber. He was a living testament to their pain, but also to their resilience. He would carry their stories and ensure they are never forgotten.